Hey, welcome back. My name's Justin. Today I'm doing a video on the Hawk Drums USA Custom Series. This is one of two series of drums made by Hawk Drums. They got the Flight Series, which comes in predetermined sizes and I think 4 or 5 different color options. And then this is their custom higher end line that costs twice as much, depending on what exact configuration that you're getting, of course. So you have control over the kind of wood they're made of, the kind of drum wraps they ship with. The sizes is all up to you as well. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the features of this, what it does right, what I think they could improve on, and all that sort of stuff. Though I'm not going to label this a review because I have a potential bias towards these drums. This is a brand owned and made by eDrum Center. But just so you know, this is not a paid sponsor video, none of that. And also the drum set will eventually go back to the store. Okay, so let's start off by talking about what this exact version of the drum set is like, though keep in mind, you can change all this stuff. This particular shell pack has a 20x14 kick drum, a 14x6.5 snare drum, tom 1 is 10x7, tom 2 is 12x8, and tom 3 is 14x14. If you buy the drum set, you're just getting the shells. This particular kit is an 8-ply maple set of shells. They come from a US company, and I think these particular trees that made these shells are likely from Michigan. And then the drum wrap is a glass glitter, and I think it looks really, really nice. It is also sourced from another US company. And you can even get this drum set in a natural wood finish if you want. Let's talk about the mesh heads. This is a 2-ply construction. It's got a very tight weave. And if I had to describe the way it feels, I'd say that this feels halfway between a Zildjian mesh head, which is very lightweight, and a Roland mesh head. A little bit on the lighter side of things. I'm told they also now sell 3-ply mesh heads. I have not played the new 3-ply mesh heads though, so I can't really tell you if those are good or bad in comparison to these. But they're pretty nice. They got a tight weave to it. They feel good. The rubber rims they include with the drums are very low profile, so they feel fantastic. They're not in your way, they're not overly wide or overly tall. They just are there to cut out a little bit of noise, but they don't mess with the feel of the drums too much. So they feel ideal, in my opinion. The downside, though, is that because they're this low profile, they're not overly durable. I can already see wear and tear here. I haven't broken through them as of filming, but I can already tell these will not last as long as like an F note or a Roland rubber rim. And also they leave marks on your sticks, so that's also something I don't love. Personally, I do think they should revamp these rubber rims, but at least they do feel really nice. Okay, so now let's talk about the sensor system. This will be slightly different on drum to drum because they have different numbers of triggers depending on the sizing. So the snare drum has 4 head piezos and 2 rim piezos. They said they're going with 4 head piezos so that you don't get hot spotting in the center, but you get an even triggering response no matter where you are on the drum. This is a very industry standard kind of design now because Yamaha is doing it, F-Note, ATV, Roland. A lot of companies are doing something like this on certain drums across their product lineup. So nothing too crazy here, but it works really well. It's sensitive, and most importantly, I didn't have to fight the settings to make this work well. I just picked a preset that got me most of the way there, and I dialed in the rim head adjust and the rim gain and stuff like that to just, iron out any imperfections that I found. This was very easy to work with inside of my TD30. And I'll put a list of compatibility, like drum modules they've tested with these drums right here on screen, so you can read through what they have to say. Now, the reason why they went with 2 rim piezos is that they want you to get equal sensitivity between right and left-handed rim shots. And that trick seems to work pretty well. Just keep in mind, you probably want to rotate it so that those piezos do line up with both hands, but it's not really a big deal if it gets slightly off axis. Now, the one thing that I didn't love about the snare drum is that the input jack got loose for some reason. It hasn't happened on the kick or the toms, but it did happen on the snare drum. Nothing broke. All I had to do was tighten it back into place. So I reached out to the company and I told them about it, and they are now switching over to like a locking washer or nut on the inside so that it will not move and it will stay in place. So that's good to see that they're evolving the design whenever there's feedback like that. Now moving over to the toms, it's a similar design but slightly different because of the number of piezos they give you. Tom 1 is the smallest drum. They decided to go with 2 side-mounted triggers for the head zones and 1 rim piezo. Works really good. Moving over to Tom 2, they've got 3 head piezos, and Tom 4, the floor tom, it has 4 head piezos, similar to the snare drum. Though I noticed that because the floor tom, even though it's the same size, it has, I believe, 8 lugs instead of 10, they were able to put the head piezos in a true cross pattern instead of like an X pattern on the snare drum. And this is just because with 10 lugs like this, they couldn't completely put them in an up, down, right, left configuration on the snare drum. It won't affect the triggering though, and it works perfectly fine on both of them. Now moving over to the kick drum, it also uses side-mounted triggers, one on the right, one on the left, and I'm told that they're doing that because they want to give each beater, if you're using double pedals, equal distance away from a sensor. It works well with single pedals. I can't tell you what it's like if I was a metal drummer because I'm not one, and I don't use double pedals on the daily. It has a giant piece of foam in the middle, industry standard, everybody does this, and that's to reduce the rebound and make it feel different from a scaled up floor tom, because you want the kick drum to have less rebound. So I found the kick drum to feel pretty good. It triggers well, does everything that I need it to do. Though I did tell the company that the foam probably needs a support structure of some kind underneath of it, like a giant piece of metal or a wooden board or rails or just something, because the foam is kind of dipping down in the middle, and they're compensating by putting another piece of foam in the middle. Minor side note, they also seem to include a very small acoustic kick drum pillow on the inside, and I think the idea is that will sort of rest up against the resonant head and make it so it doesn't ring out, and so it can be a little bit quieter. If you want to fully make sure the resonant head doesn't ring out, you just still have to put another pillow on the inside of there to fully dampen it, but it's a nice touch for them to include it. Though personally, I feel like maybe they should use some sort of system to hold it in place against that resonant head if that's what the pillow's there for. And finally, like I said earlier, it does come with a pre-applied kick drum patch in the box, or at least the drum set they sent to me does have that pre-applied. So now let's talk about pricing and whether or not it's worth buying. So this particular version that I have is quoted at being $3,000. If you buy a different drum wrap, it can be $2,500, like on this kit right here. Also, I think that one is a 6-ply maple. If you get a larger kit with exotic wood and no wrap, it could be $4,500, like this kit right here. When it comes to their Flight series, which is a much more reasonable price, that is $1,300. Same trigger system, same mesh heads and everything, but you only get like 4 or 5 color options, and the toms mount to the kick drum. The hardware isn't quite as premium, those types of things. But that does not make the drum set bad. In fact, I think the average person, if you're looking at Hawk, I would go with the Flight series. The USA Custom series is for people that are a little bit more picky and have like a certain goal in mind. They really want a specific kind of color, specific kind of shells. And so that's what custom orders, custom companies are for. I've actually played several Hawk drum sets over the years. This is not my first experience with them. I remember playing Hawk drums a long time ago when they were like 1 or 2 trigger systems back. Right now they have the Talon 3 system, and this Chrome kit was either the Talon 1 or the Talon 2. So they've been making these for quite a while, and now this version of the drum set is another evolution of that. Now that's not to say that Hawk drums is completely perfect. One area where I feel like they should be a little bit more meticulous is the way they wrap the drums. So, snare drum looks awesome, but if I lift the rim, you can see that there's a notch cut out there. It's probably something they cleaned up because of a snafu during the installation process, and they put the rim on and they're like, hey, you can't see it, so they ran with it. And if they did rewrap the drum, they would have had to order more wrap because these are one-of-one drum sets. They're not making 8 or 10 blue drum sets at a time. So that would have probably added an extra 2 weeks to order the wrap and then redo the entire snare drum. But still, that's not something you want to see on a $3,000, shell pack like this. It probably won't happen to the next customer because, obviously these are one-of-one kits. You're not going to see this exact same mistake twice. But still, want to mention this, they probably need to be a tad more meticulous and not let stuff like this slide with this higher price category. But that aside, on balance, this drum set is really good. It looks great, it feels good to play on, you don't have to fight it inside of the trigger settings, you have control over just about every aspect of the way it looks and down to the shell type. It's a very solid drum set. And if you don't really care about the shells being made in the US, then the Flight series exists and it's half the price and it triggers just as well. But now let's talk a little bit about competitors. If you're looking for custom builders just in the United States, you're probably going to be comparing Hawk Drums to Field Drums, which is a company that's been making acoustic-looking E-drums for a very long time. You can also take a look at Muzio Drums, which I reviewed a few years back on the channel, so you can go watch that video, but I'm not up to date on their newest stuff. And the last one that I know of is going to be Extreme Drums. I don't remember the exact state they're based from, but they are based in the US, and they will make custom acoustic-sized electronic drums to order, last I knew. If you're willing to buy something over in Europe, then of course, Jobecki comes into play, Drum Tech comes into play, AE Hybrid, and Diamond Drums. There's probably more that I'm forgetting, but those are like the 4 in Europe that I think of when I think of acoustic-looking electronic drums with customization possible on their end. And that's the video. Thanks so much for watching all the way to the end. I really appreciate it. Have an awesome day, and I'll see you in the next one.